Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. I wasn't even supposed to be at that dinner. I had the flu 4 days ago and still felt like a melted snowman in a suit. But Harper insisted. Said it would look bad if I skipped her parents' 40th. Never mind that I helped organize the whole thing. Never mind I built that slideshow her mom cried over. No, what mattered was that I showed up and didn't embarrass her. Her words. I sat at the table, silent. My stomach was in knots, but not from the lingering fever. From her. Harper had this shine to her when she was surrounded by people. Like a chameleon that thrived under attention. With her sisters, she was witty. With her parents, obedient. With me, I was the background noise to her show. Dinner started out quiet. Steak. Mashed potatoes. Her dad tried to ask me about work, but Harper jumped in. Lyle's been super busy, she said with a tone soaked in sarcasm. He almost got to the laundry last week. People chuckled politely. I stared at my glass. Then came the moment I'll never forget. Harper stood up, tapped her knife on her glass like she was at a wedding, and said, "Okay, before dessert, I thought we could do something fun." No one stopped her. I wish they had. She pulled a folded sheet from her purse. I made a list of all the adorable little mistakes my dear husband has made this past year. The title read in pink cursive, "Oops." Lyle did it again. I thought it was a joke. Like an actual loving joke. But then she read aloud. Number 1. Told my dad he looked great for his age at his mother's funeral. Number 2. Mistook my co-worker's husband for her dad. Number 3. Asked a pregnant woman when she was due. She wasn't pregnant. The table stiffened. Her sister giggled behind her wine. Harper didn't stop. Number 7. Burn the eggs. Number 8. Burn the rice. Number 9. Burn the toast. He's basically fire. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't feel shame. I felt tired. When she reached number 14, I gently pushed my chair back. The screech of the legs made everyone look up. I stood, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "Calm as you please. You forgot the biggest one." She blinked. "What?" "My biggest mistake," I said, "was marrying you." She froze. The silence that followed felt eternal. But then, from the far end of the table, her father, gray-haired, quiet, always observing, nodded. Just once. Everyone turned to him. Harper's jaw dropped. "Dad." He reached for his wine and muttered. It had to be said. That night, I packed a bag. No yelling. No slammed doors. But the next morning? Let's just say I made sure Harper would never turn me into her punchline again. I woke up that morning with an odd sense of peace. Not relief, just quiet. Like the kind of quiet that settles over a city after a storm has wrecked everything. I didn't go back home. I didn't call Harper. I didn't answer any of her 5 texts or 3 missed calls. Instead, I drove to the storage unit I hadn't visited in months. I had boxes there from my old apartment, from a time when I still felt like a person with opinions, not just a man trying to avoid conflict. I found what I was looking for, my dad's old leather briefcase. Inside it, the original draft of our prenup. Handwritten notes. The clause I added and Harper insisted we keep for legal spice, she said with a laugh. Back then, it was cute. Yesterday, it became the fire escape. I wasn't rich, but Harper liked to pretend we were. She demanded the image, the lifestyle. Designer bags she bought on credit. Dinners with her pretentious boss I couldn't stand. A trip to Italy we couldn't afford, where she posted photos of us smiling on a gondola while we were barely speaking. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I became a side character. So that morning, I booked a consultation with a lawyer, someone recommended by my friend Theo. She listened carefully as I recounted the events, including Harper's oopsie list. The lawyer actually paused and said, "Wait." She read it at a dinner table. I nodded. She shook her head and said, "All right, we're filing under emotional cruelty. That's not a joke anymore." That evening, I sent Harper a message. "Lyle, check your email." No emojis. No dramatic goodbye. She replied 10 minutes later with just, "Harper, are you serious right now?" I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded her the message from my lawyer. Her next message came an hour later. "Harper, wait. Can we please talk before you make this official?" She sounded scared. Not sorry, scared. There's a difference. A woman who counts your flaws with a smile on her face doesn't deserve your sympathy when the tables turn. The part that still stings, though? I looked back through our shared calendar later that night. She always made me use it. Every event, appointment, even my dentist checkups went in there. But I noticed something else. For the past year, she had marked a little X in the notes section on random days. I thought it was nothing, just her weird organization system. But the pattern told a different story. Every X fell on days I worked late, traveled, or had a night class. I cross-checked with photos on her social media. New places, same outfits. And always the same guy in the background. Not in focus, but always there. Different angle. Same watch. Same build. Same smirk. I stared at my screen for a long time. Then I whispered out loud to no one. She wasn't just counting my mistakes. She was covering hers. And the worst part? I think her parents knew. Because the night she mocked me at that dinner table, her mother looked down, her sister bit her lip, and her father nodded. He knew. They all knew. But the next part? That was mine to write. The day after I confronted Harper at the dinner, I came home to find the house spotless. Unnaturally spotless. The kind of clean that only happens after someone's either been robbed or is preparing to rob you. I stepped in and instantly noticed the scent, lemon disinfectant. Not her usual lavender. Her keys were still on the hook, but her purse was gone. Shoes by the door? The wrong ones. She never wore those nude pumps unless she was trying to impress someone. I sat down on the edge of the couch, letting everything settle. My phone buzzed, another text from her. Harper, we need to talk. Seriously, don't make this ugly. Ugly? It had already been grotesque. But I didn't respond. I needed proof before anything else. I wasn't going to be gaslit into another apology spiral. I'd spent too many nights trying to explain things I hadn't done just to avoid her icy silence. I needed something solid. So I went to the one place she thought I'd never check, her old laptop. The silver one she retired after I bought her that fancy new tablet for our anniversary. She told me she only used it for writing poetry. Spoiler alert, there was no poetry. I booted it up. No password change. Same desktop wallpaper. Us on the gondola, fake smiling. I clicked through a few folders. Most were boring. Receipts, shopping lists, spreadsheets for God knows what. But then I saw one labeled backup. And inside, screenshots, chat logs, photos. She wasn't just cheating, she was documenting it. For what? I have no idea. Maybe it was some twisted trophy system. Maybe she thought I'd never find them. One thread stood out. Messages with a contact saved as Caleb. I didn't recognize the name, but I recognized the face. It was the guy from the photos I noticed earlier, the same guy in the background of those social posts. The same guy she told me was a coworker's cousin who just photobombs everyone. They weren't just flirty. They were vicious. They talked about me like I was an obstacle. A joke. A wallet with feelings. Caleb, does he suspect anything? Harper, LOL. He cried watching a cat rescue video. I think we're safe. That one punched the air from my chest. Not because she mocked me, but because I remembered that night. It was the first evening in months she held my hand without being asked. That night was fake. I sat there for over an hour reading everything. She lied about where she was during her sister weekend. Lied about the work retreats. Lied about loving me while she planned a future with someone else. And still came home to criticize how I cut cucumbers. I copied everything to a flash drive. Took screenshots. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to shout. I was going to bury her in truth. That night, I wrote her a letter. Just 6 words. You're free. And now, so am I. Then I packed my bags. But I didn't leave the house empty. I left something behind she'd never expect. And what happened the next morning? She walked into her own wake. After I found the folder on her laptop, I didn't sleep. Not out of rage, but clarity. Everything that had been gnawing at me in the dark corners of our marriage finally had a name. It wasn't just neglect. It wasn't boredom. It was betrayal disguised as routine. Harper had been crafting an exit plan and painting me as the villain in her story the whole time. But here's where it gets worse. Or better, depending on how you look at it. I didn't confront her. I didn't text. I didn't leave angry voicemails or stage a big gotcha moment. Instead, I stayed. That entire day, quietly. While she was gone, probably with him. I walked through the house we built together, taking photos of everything I paid for. Everything she once called ours. The couch. The wine fridge. The vintage record player she told her friends was an anniversary gift from a perfect husband. She forgot to mention it was from my bonus check, and that she later listed it as hers in a group chat. I even took a photo of the sticky note she left on the bathroom mirror months ago. It read, "By toothpaste." That was the last time she wrote anything for me. Not an "I love you." Not even "have a good day." Just toothpaste. I gathered all the financial statements, my pay stubs, her credit card debt, which, by the way, I had been quietly paying down without her knowing, and the prenup she'd once joked about never needing. I dropped it all off with my lawyer before noon. Then I returned home and started packing. But not my stuff. Hers. I knew she'd lose her mind over that. So I left her a note on her pillow. Not angry. Not cruel. Just cold. "Everything you own is in the guest room. Everything else is mine. Call your boyfriend for a ride." Then I printed out the screenshots. Not all of them. Just the ones that mattered. One from each month over the last year. Her calling me pathetic in texts. Her mocking my job, my body, my emotions. Her telling Caleb he's too soft to ever leave. I placed them neatly on the kitchen table like dinner menus. When she walked in, the sound of the door opening didn't even make me flinch. I stayed in the hallway, just out of sight, and listened. I heard her heels click across the floor. The shuffle of paper. The pause. The sharp inhale. Then silence. She didn't call out my name. She knew. After a moment, she stormed into the hallway, clutching the pages in her hand. Her eyes were wild, mouth open like she was ready to scream. But I beat her to it, quietly. "I didn't leave," I said. "You did. One screenshot at a time." She didn't reply, just stared. I don't think she had a speech prepared. She never thought she'd need one. Then I pointed to the guest room. "That's all yours. So is the freedom you wanted. Congrats." I didn't wait for her response. I walked past her, out the door, and into the car already packed with my essentials. She didn't follow. And that silence? It finally felt like peace. I didn't block her. That's what surprises most people when I tell them. I didn't change my number. I didn't go dark on social media. I wanted her to see me, but not reach me. I wanted her to sit in that silence she created and wonder if every person around her knew what she'd done. And it started faster than I expected. By the third day of my absence, she called my sister. My sister, who never really liked Harper but was always civil for my sake. Harper tried to play it cool at first. "Just checking in. Haven't heard from Lyle. Weird week, huh?" My sister's reply? "He's fine. Weird thing about Lyle. He's a lot stronger than you thought." That's when the panic began. My phone buzzed constantly. First with texts, then voice memos, then emails. Her messages slid from annoyed to apologetic in less than 48 hours. "Can we please talk? I know I messed up. You're being cruel, Lyle. Let's not blow up our whole life over a few mistakes." Mistakes. That word clanged like a broken bell in my chest. She reduced a year of emotional warfare and betrayal to a few mistakes. It was almost laughable if it didn't hurt so much. But here's the twist. I wasn't the only one getting her attention. See, I had mailed a small envelope to one other person before I left, her father, Walter, the same man who nodded when I called marrying her my greatest mistake. The man who had quietly watched her behavior for years, saying nothing out of family loyalty, but never stepping in either. Inside the envelope were selected screenshots. A single sentence accompanied them. "This is how she talks about you too." Because tucked between the texts mocking me, Harper had taken shots at her own family. Complaints about her mother being dense, her sister being a drunk with a baby face, and her father being an old man clinging to morals like it's still 1954. I hadn't planned to send those. But after that dinner, after he nodded, I felt like he deserved to know who his daughter really was when the filters dropped. 3 days later, I got a letter, handwritten, from Walter. "Lyle, you didn't imagine any of it. We've seen it, too. I'm sorry it took me too long to say it. Do what you need to do. You have more support than you think. W." That letter hit me harder than the betrayal ever did. Because for the first time, someone saw me. Back in her world, things weren't going so well. The friends who used to clap at her witty digs now avoided her. Her sister posted something passive-aggressive on Instagram. "Some people only shine when they're stepping on others." Harper commented, "If you have something to say, say it." She got no reply. And then came the message that told me everything I needed to know. "Harper, please, just tell me if this is really over." I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because when someone finally listens, silence says more than any speech ever could. By the end of the week, Harper went from radio silence to full-blown meltdown. It started when she showed up at my office, all dolled up like she hadn't spent the last year tearing me down one sarcastic comment at a time. She smiled through the glass wall, thinking I'd rush out to meet her. I didn't. My assistant leaned in. There's a woman here saying she's your wife. I looked up from my desk. She used to be. Tell her I'm in a meeting. She stood out there for nearly 15 minutes, trying to act composed as people whispered. That's when I realized Harper didn't miss me. She missed the illusion. She missed control. She missed being the one who got the last word. But now, she was standing on the outside of her own story. And I had just started writing the second chapter. What she didn't know, what made the whole thing truly poetic, was that our social circle was no longer hers. You see, the couples we used to hang out with, most of them were my friends first. But she charmed them, pulled them into her web, made herself the center of every dinner, every vacation, every group text. Until I left. And one by one, they started reaching out to me. Some were blunt. We always thought something felt off. Others were more cautious. She's been telling everyone you had a breakdown. That you vanished. Is that true? So I sent them the screenshots. Not all. Just enough. A glimpse behind the curtain. I didn't editorialize. I let her own words do the talking. By Monday, 3 people had removed her from the group chats. Her best friend Alicia, who Harper had once called a loyal golden retriever, posted something cryptic on Facebook. Some women can fake a smile for years, but you can't fake being a decent human. Harper commented a single question mark. No one answered. But the real shock came 2 days later. My lawyer called and said Harper had filed a counterclaim. She wants to sue for emotional distress. The lawyer said, barely hiding her amusement. Wait, I asked, stunned. Because I left? No, because you embarrassed her socially. I sat there blinking at the phone. My soon-to-be ex-wife was trying to claim damages because her reputation was taking a hit. Not because I lied. Not because I cheated. But because I existed after her lies fell apart. The audacity would have been impressive if it wasn't so pathetic. I didn't panic. Instead, I prepared. I drafted a statement. I contacted a few people she'd lied to. And I made sure my side of the story was documented and clean. I didn't spread rumors. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stood in the light while her shadow unraveled behind her. The day before the court hearing, she texted me again. Lyle, can we please just talk? I miss you. We don't have to do this in front of everyone. But we did. Because the one thing she feared more than losing me was being seen for who she truly was when I wasn't there to play the fool. The morning of the hearing, I didn't eat. My stomach was a brick. I wasn't afraid of her. I was afraid of being gaslit again. Of somehow walking into that room with all the facts on my side and still leaving feeling like I had done something wrong. But my lawyer, Claire, she looked at me before we went in and said, "You're not the one on trial here, Lyle. You're just finally letting the truth echo." We entered the courtroom, and there she was. Harper, dressed in muted tones, hair neatly pulled back, no dramatic makeup, just enough eyeliner to sell her as the wounded wife. Her lawyer looked like he'd been pulled from a lifestyle magazine. Polished, charming, smug. He shook hands like he'd already won. But they didn't know what was coming. Harper was suing for emotional damages, claiming my abandonment caused her psychological distress and reputational harm. She said I'd humiliated her by leaving without proper communication and sharing private messages. According to her, I orchestrated a smear campaign. She cried. Literally cried. Soft, well-timed sniffles as she described how she found the kitchen empty, how I ghosted her, how I refused to work on the marriage. She said I was emotionally unpredictable, secretive, and obsessively controlling. It would have been funny if it wasn't so twisted. Then it was our turn. Claire stood up and calmly handed the judge a thick folder. We'd like to enter into record the following: documented instances of infidelity, financial manipulation, and emotional degradation inflicted upon my client over a period of 18 months. She walked the court through the messages, carefully redacted, but unflinching. The texts where Harper mocked my appearance. The ones where she bragged about gaslighting me. The message where she said, "I'll make him leave, but it'll look like it was his choice." That one hit hard. But the real moment? That came when Claire called a witness. Someone I didn't expect. Walter, Harper's father. He walked up in his old navy blazer, stoic as ever, and swore in. He didn't look at his daughter once. "I don't have much to say," he began. "Just that I watched my son-in-law sit through years of silent disrespect. I watched my daughter humiliate him for sport. And I saw the day he finally said enough. I don't think he wanted revenge. I think he just wanted peace. The courtroom was silent. Even Harper stopped dabbing at her eyes. The judge didn't need long. Claim dismissed. No damages. No payout. And most importantly, Harper's version of the truth shattered in public. She stormed out before the gavel hit the block. I stayed seated for a moment, just breathing. Not celebrating. Not smiling. Just breathing without the weight of her narrative on my chest. Later that night, I got one last message from her. Hope it was worth it. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did. And maybe she was right. Because I don't want love that feels like survival. I want peace. 2 weeks after the court hearing, Harper tried one last time. She emailed me a long, winding letter. No apology. No real ownership. Just a mess of half-baked justifications, vague regrets, and the usual, "we had good times, right?" line. I read it once, calmly, and archived it without replying. I had nothing left to say, and nothing left to give her. Instead, I turned inward. I focused on rebuilding the life I had lost inside that marriage. I moved into a small loft downtown, nothing flashy, just quiet and mine. I started eating better, sleeping without that invisible weight on my chest, and for the first time in years, I laughed. Genuinely laughed. I reconnected with old friends. Some of them told me, awkwardly, we didn't know how bad it was. Others admitted they always sensed something was off, but didn't want to overstep. I didn't hold grudges. How could they know? Harper wore charm like a mask, and I'd helped her tie the ribbons. One night, my sister brought over a box she'd kept in her attic, stuff from my college days. Inside, I found journals I thought I'd lost. Reading them, I saw a version of myself I barely recognized. Hopeful, nerdy, soft-hearted, and full of dreams. And that hit me harder than anything else. Not what Harper took from me, but what I stopped giving myself. I'd let her dim me, and I had let it happen slowly. But not anymore. Months passed, and one random morning, I ran into someone at the park. Her name was Adrienne. She saw me feeding a scruffy dog a leftover sandwich and said, "Most people just walk past him." I said, "Most people don't see him." She smiled and said, "I saw you." That was it. Nothing magical. No swelling music. Just someone seeing me and not expecting me to shrink. And that's when I knew I wasn't broken. I was rebuilding. So here's what I'll leave you with. If someone ever makes you feel like love is a transaction, like affection must be earned, or your flaws are punchlines, they don't love you. They love control. And your quiet exit might be the loudest freedom you'll ever earn. Thanks for sticking through this story with me. If it reminded you of something in your own life, or a moment in history when someone quietly rose instead of fighting back, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And don't forget, you've been watching Reddit Confessions, where even the quietest voices finally get heard.